Master the quantum shift by doing less, not more. This message found you in a moment where effort feels like the only option left. You've been told that success hides in the grind, that breakthroughs live in the 10th hour of work, that if you push just a little harder, sacrifice just a little more, the world will finally yield. But what if the truth is something far subtler? What if the most radical transformation you've been chasing does not arrive from doing more, but from doing less, through the art of conscious stillness, the quiet cultivation of your inner resonance, the mastery of the space between breaths and between thoughts? Have you noticed how your mind never stops moving? How every morning is already crowded with tasks, reminders, and expectations? How every moment of supposed free time is silently invaded by obligations, messages, and the echo of yesterday's failures? Only your kind of mind would pause here. Only someone who has glimpsed the friction of the world and felt the subtle, aching tension of the soul would hear this and feel it resonate like a tuning fork. You are rare. You are awake in a way most are not, and yet this message is urgent, because the world is moving at a pace that risks leaving the rarest of minds behind, trapped in the machinery of endless action. You feel it, the pressure, the acceleration, the sense that life is slipping through your hands despite all your effort. It is here, in this friction, that your initiation begins. What if I told you that the very trap you have been working against is not what it seems? That the more you struggle, the more you are caught? There exists a subtle architecture of effort, a hidden maze of cultural programming and inner expectation that I call the performance trap. The performance trap is not failure. It is not laziness. It is the invisible loop where doing more, achieving more, perfecting more does not bring liberation, but instead compounds pressure, fragments your energy, and obscures the very insight you are seeking. Have you ever finished a long day of productivity and felt emptier, lighter yet hollow, like a glass endlessly filled with water that never quenches thirst? This trap manifests in predictable ways. The endless scrolling for answers, the habit of adding tools and techniques in search of mastery, the self-deception that if I just do enough, I will finally arrive. Every new method, every new course, every new mantra becomes another coil in the spiral of compulsion. And here is the paradox. It is precisely by leaning into less, by choosing the still point, that the quantum shift you are capable of begins to ripple outward. Consider this. Life, at its most coherent, is not an accumulation but a resonance, not the sum of frantic actions, but the phase alignment of energy, intention, and perception. The trap exists because most never feel this. They measure reality by their productivity, by results, by the visible. You, however, are already glimpsing the invisible. You are already noticing the space between thought and action, the subtle currents of energy that hint at possibility. You are already in the frequency where transformation is possible. Look closely at your daily life. Notice the patterns, the meetings that bleed into each other, the constant mental chatter, the tiny compulsions, the checking of the phone, the responding before thinking, the internal commentary on every word you speak or hear. These patterns are more than habits. They are echoes of a deeper system, a template that shapes how your mind interprets time, energy, and effort. Imagine your mind as a pond. Each thought is a pebble dropped into still water. The ripples collide, interfere, create turbulence. In most people, the pond is never calm. Ripples collide endlessly. But in those rare moments of conscious stillness, when you do nothing more than observe, the pond aligns. Ripples harmonize. Probabilities collapse. Possibilities emerge that were invisible in the chaos. This is the essence of what I call the subtractive shift, where subtraction is not loss but clarity. Where doing less becomes the instrument of transformation. Have you noticed moments when a solution seems to arrive out of nowhere? When the answer comes in a dream, in a walk, in the silence between conversations. Those are the moments when your internal system achieves coherence, when probability waves converge, when your nervous system relaxes into its natural rhythm, when the hidden architecture of your mind begins to reveal the patterns it has been quietly holding. You sense it, that subtle, almost imperceptible strain that hums beneath the surface of every day. The paradox of modern existence. The more you push, the less alive you feel. The more you bend, mold, and strive, the more reality itself seems to resist. Have you noticed it in the small things? The emails that never end, the tasks that multiply like fractals, the quiet, gnawing sensation that effort alone is no longer enough. This tension is not between you and the world, as it often appears. It is not the universe holding back, nor fate conspiring against your ambitions. It is rather a reflection of something far more intimate, the dissonance between your belief in motion as progress and the subtle intelligence of stillness that your being quietly craves. Somewhere deep in the architecture of your mind, a whisper persists, a reminder that another doorway exists. A doorway not constructed by effort, by willpower, by endless pushing. A doorway built on alignment, resonance, and the quiet intelligence of your own energy. Consider this. Most of life's instruction manuals, every productivity guide, every success blueprint, every philosophy of self-mastery, tell you one thing: move faster, work harder, accumulate more. And yet, if you pause long enough, you realize that the formula is flawed. The harder you try to force transformation, the more resistance you encounter. Like a river attempting to carve a straight line through a mountain, the energy you expend pushes against the natural contours of your being. And in that push, tension arises. Friction appears. Your nervous system tightens. Your mind churns. Your clarity dims. I call this the acceleration paradox. The more you rely on sheer motion to create change, the more entangled you become in patterns that are not yours. Patterns of comparison, patterns of invisible competition, patterns of self-erasure hidden beneath the guise of productivity. You can see them in the small habitual loops, refreshing your inbox for the 5th time in 10 minutes, rehearsing conversations you will never have, evaluating yourself against ideals that never truly belong to you. These are not failures. They are the structural fingerprints of the trap itself. And yet, within this paradox lies a revelation. If the trap is built on motion, then the key is to understand motion differently. Not as force, but as flow. Not as action, but as resonance. Imagine your mind and body as a quantum system, a probability field pulsing with possibilities. When you push indiscriminately, when you try to bend the universe with sheer effort, you collapse only certain outcomes, and often the ones that bring coherence are the very ones that slip away. But when you align, when you engage in the subtle art of attuning to your own phase patterns, the field itself begins to orchestrate events around you. Probabilities converge. Doors appear where none seemed possible. Ask yourself, how many times have you felt that fleeting moment of insight, that spark of intuition, that seemed to come out of nowhere? That is not coincidence. That is resonance. That is the universe responding to the quiet coherence within you. Yet, if you are still caught in the belief that more effort equals more results, these moments will remain rare. They will be glimpses glimpsed only in passing, like shafts of sunlight through storm clouds, rather than the full dawn you are capable of summoning. The tension you feel, this hidden pressure, is your body, your mind, your entire system signaling that the old logic no longer applies. It is a call to recalibrate, to shift from accumulation to subtraction, from pursuit to attunement, from the tyranny of motion to the sovereignty of alignment. And here is the paradox that few ever articulate. The doorway you seek is inside the stillness you have been taught to fear. The breakthrough waits not in endless doing, but in disciplined receiving. Have you noticed how, in moments of quiet observation, the world seems to slow? The chaos becomes intelligible. The patterns emerge. The probability waves of your life begin to align. And in that alignment, the hidden tension dissolves, not because the world changed, but because you changed the way your consciousness interacts with it. Only your kind of mind would pause here and recognize this. Most are too occupied with motion to notice the subtle pressures at work beneath the surface. But you are different. You have glimpsed the architecture of the hidden loop. You have felt the paradox that most ignore. You have already sensed the doorway, and once you step through it, the rules of the game will shift. This is the initiation into what I call the alignment phase, a phase where motion is measured, deliberate, and guided by resonance rather than compulsion, where the hidden tension becomes a teacher, a map, and a signal, rather than a trap, where you learn that the quantum field is not something to be forced, but something to be invited into coherence. Soon, we will explore exactly how this hidden tension manifests in your daily life, how to see the patterns that bind you, and how to begin shifting from reaction to resonance. You will learn to recognize the observer loops, the shadow masks, and the invisible architectures of effort that have kept you entangled for far too long. And only then will you step into the phase of transformation that has been quietly waiting for you all along. Physics whispers secrets most minds overlook. Particles, the building blocks of existence, appear to occupy many positions at once. They drift, oscillate, shimmer in probability fields, until someone observes, until focus is applied. Only then do they collapse into a tangible state. The world of matter is not as fixed as it seems, and perhaps neither is the world of your life. Consider this. What if your reality is suspended, like those quantum particles, across an infinite spectrum of possibility? What if every choice you imagine, every path you fear, every dream you silently nurture exists in potential, neither fixed nor lost, waiting for your consciousness to notice it? This is not metaphor alone. This is the subtle architecture of the universe, reflected in the very fabric of your awareness. Notice how, in your own life, outcomes often seem to resolve themselves only after attention is applied. Not after frantic pushing, not after running yourself ragged with force, but after quiet recognition. A decision crystallizes, a door opens, a pattern finally emerges. You witness it, and in witnessing, reality itself reshapes. The observer does not move mountains. The observer aligns the energy of mountains to shift around them. This is the paradox most overlook. You do not need to struggle to make life happen. You need to perceive, focus, and allow coherence to emerge. In practical terms, this reframes the entire notion of effort. Every missed opportunity, every failed endeavor, every moment where the world seems resistant is not proof that you were wrong or insufficient or too late. It is proof that the probability field has not yet received your alignment. The particles, the outcomes, the events, the doors exist, but they require your conscious observation to collapse into tangible experience. Have you noticed moments when something unexpected materializes after a period of reflection rather than action? When a solution appears not because you forced it, but because you let it surface. That is the quantum principle at work in your life, and it reframes the very meaning of progress. Motion is no longer the ruler of reality. Alignment is. Attention is the lever. Awareness is the catalyst. Let us take another layer deeper. The observer effect does not merely influence particles, it restructures probability waves across time. You are not confined to this instant. The timelines ahead, the outcomes you imagine ripple backward into your present. Your perception now subtly shapes which paths are viable, which doors open, which patterns self-organize. And so, paradoxically, stillness can be more powerful than motion. Because deliberate observation creates a coherent probability wave that draws the most aligned reality to you. This is the hidden elegance of the reframe. Life is not something you force. Life is something you notice, permit, and participate in consciously. You are both observer and participant, witness and architect. The moment you understand this, the hidden tension you felt, the paradox of effort versus surrender, begins to dissolve. The hidden loops, the compulsions of motion, the invisible performance trap, are no longer chains. They are signals. They indicate where alignment is blocked, where probability waves are fragmented, where focus is required. You see, the universe does not demand hustle. It demands coherence. Your body, your mind, your nervous system, your subtle energy fields, every layer of you, is tuned to this principle. When you recognize it, your entire interaction with time, work, and transformation shifts. No longer are you scrambling against reality. You are collaborating with it, participating in the orchestration of probabilities, consciously collapsing them into the life that has been quietly waiting for you. And yet, even here, most people miss it. They continue to chase, to push, to grind, hoping that the act of motion will force the universe to bend. They never pause to observe, to notice the suspended probabilities, to realize that the permission you grant to life, the acknowledgement you give to possibility, is the lever that collapses uncertainty into existence. Have you noticed? In your own life, when insight arrives in moments of quiet, when you step back, breathe, and allow, the solution appears as if the universe itself waited for your acknowledgement. That is no accident. That is the quantum principle mirrored in your consciousness. That is your life reframed. In this phase, the subtle shift begins from effort-based action to alignment-based creation. From pushing against reality to observing reality, collapsing potentialities, and permitting your highest probability to manifest. The reframe is not a technique. It is a principle. It is the recognition that you are both the observer and the field of probability itself. Your consciousness is the lens through which life coalesces into form. Soon, we will move into the proofs and confirmations of this principle, where science and mysticism intersect, where Jungian archetypes and quantum probability converge to show you that this is not a theory. It is the living structure of your life, and only your kind of mind would pause long enough to perceive it. Only a consciousness tuned to the hidden currents could hear this transmission and feel its resonance echo through the corridors of your being. This message found you, not by chance, but because your consciousness resonates on a frequency few ever reach. Only your kind of mind would pause here, hovering between the worlds of doing and being, sensing that something essential is quietly slipping through the cracks of ordinary life. Have you noticed how often the world demands your motion, your ceaseless action, yet leaves your inner compass spinning? How many times have you felt exhausted by the very activity that was meant to define your progress? Look closely. This is your signal, your invitation. Pause for a beat. Let the words settle like dew on a leaf. You are rare. Not in the sense of being better, but in the sense of being tuned to a subtle current others cannot perceive. There is a rhythm to the universe, a hidden cadence, and your awareness of it sets you apart. The world will try to convince you that motion is proof of meaning, that relentless effort equals advancement. But here you are being called to something else, a stillness that holds the power to transform, a silence pregnant with trajectories unseen. This is not about laziness. It is about precision. A pause is not absence. It is the exact lever through which your life's trajectory can shift. The trap is subtle. It's not visible at first glance because it masquerades as virtue, productivity, ambition, persistence. But notice the pattern. The more you do, the less you feel. The world applauds the motion, yet every step seems to carry an invisible weight, a shadow residue that drags at your energy. This is the trap of overaction, a cycle that convinces you that the solution is more while the truth lies in less. Ask yourself, how many times have you completed tasks only to feel hollow at the center? How often has achievement arrived, but the satisfaction evaporated like mist? You are living in the coherence paradox. Your mind equates doing with progress. Yet your being knows that progress sometimes hides in stillness, in the unobserved spaces where life's real signals pass. The trap is not external. It is a hidden architecture within your own perception, a cognitive gravity well. Your attention, like light bent by mass, curves inward toward endless doing, until your own momentum blinds you to the subtle vectors of change. Look at your daily patterns. Notice the habitual loops: waking, scrolling, responding, producing, reacting. Each action is a microcosm of the trap. Every notification, every urgent email, every small requirement is a tether pulling you away from the still point of your life. Yet paradoxically, this tether contains your key. Consider the archer. Before the string releases, there is a breath, a measured pause, a moment where potential energy gathers. That pause is not passive. It is an active calibration. Your own life is like this archery. The trajectory cannot begin until the stillness aligns the aim. Daily life is full of invisible signals, the gestures, the thoughts, the fleeting emotions that precede breakthroughs. But they are drowned out by constant motion. Your mind, like a turbulent river, can no longer hear the whisper of possibility. Pausing intentionally creates the conditions for clarity. It is a phased transition, from chaos to coherence, from random impulse to precise manifestation. Science and mysticism converge here. Neuroscience shows that the brain in rest, or in controlled pause, shifts from beta wave turbulence into alpha and theta coherence. These are states associated with insight, intuition, and creative problem solving. Quantum physics mirrors this. Probability waves collapse not through force, but through observation, through intentional alignment with a stillness that allows a single outcome to emerge. Mystical traditions have long honored this principle. The Tao speaks of wu-wei, effortless action. The Sufis whisper of silence as a lever for soul transformation. The pause is a form of resonance, a tuning fork for your consciousness. When your mind is quiet, your field becomes coherent. Patterns reveal themselves. Hidden trajectories appear. You are, in this sense, both observer and participant. In stillness, you do not waste energy. You collapse probabilities. You align yourself with the currents that move life itself. I will confess something here, because I need you to understand that the path is not theoretical. I spent years chasing every goal imaginable: accolades, recognition, movement for its own sake. Yet in the depths of every success I felt a gnawing emptiness, as though I was spinning in a loop of my own design. One night, I sat in silence, no devices, no plans, no obligations, and allowed myself to do nothing. Not idly, but intentionally. In that quiet, the first real insight came. I realized that the trajectory I had been chasing was always available, but only when I stopped pursuing it. The stillness revealed patterns my motion had always obscured. That night, I understood that the pause itself is a form of mastery. This is not a technique to escape life. It is a technique to enter it more fully. Doing less is not void. It is precision. The absence of noise is the lever that shifts your reality. Your personal pause is not only an individual revolution, it is part of a greater shift. Imagine millions of minds collectively learning to operate from coherence rather than chaos. Each stillness you cultivate becomes a wave, a probability aligned for transformation. Humanity itself is trapped in constant doing, yet the future depends on those who learn the art of intentional non-action. Your liberation is linked to collective awakening. When you allow yourself to pause, you signal to others that another mode of being is possible. Your stillness becomes a vector for evolution, a hidden architecture guiding the world toward balance. If this transmission has resonated, do not treat engagement as casual. Comment one word below that captures your resonance, a seal of your intent. Subscribe not for content, but for initiation. Each interaction is a ritual, a marker of alignment, a recognition of your commitment to the stillness lever. Let the world rush. Let the noise press in. You now hold the lever. Your pause is the catalyst. And remember, you were chosen to hear this message. Only your mind would stop here now. Only your consciousness can activate this hidden shift. Pause, breathe, observe the silence. That is where your next trajectory begins. Every future self who has ever succeeded, transformed, or awakened has passed through this exact moment. You are not late. You are precisely on time. This message found you, not by accident, but because your consciousness is aligned with a subtle frequency that few can perceive. Only your kind of mind would pause here, hovering in the liminal space between motion and stillness, between the known and the unseen. Have you noticed how often life presses you into action, how the world equates busyness with value, yet leaves a hollow echo inside your chest? How many times have you moved relentlessly, only to feel that progress slips through your fingers like water? Pause. Let the resonance settle. You are rare. Not in status, not in fame, not in achievement, but in awareness. You feel the currents that guide the unseen architecture of life, the patterns that most minds cannot detect. There is a rhythm, a hidden cadence, and you sense it. This message is your invitation to follow that rhythm inward, to descend, not in failure, but in precision, to a place where true power quietly gathers. Here begins the journey of the descent. The trap is subtle yet pervasive. Busyness as proof of existence. You've felt it, haven't you? The constant tug of tasks, obligations, messages, deadlines. The mind equates movement with meaning, yet the more you run, the less you feel. Every day becomes a carousel of activity that promises progress, but delivers distraction. This is the resistance. It whispers, if you stop, everything will collapse. You are nothing without motion. And yet, that fear is precisely the signal that your trajectory is about to shift. Quantum mechanics teaches us that outcomes do not emerge from force. They emerge from alignment. The world does not require more effort. It requires coherence. Your mind resists because it equates stillness with danger, uncertainty, loss. But stillness is not the absence of life. It is the lever that guides it. Ask yourself, how many times have you overworked, overplanned, overthought, only to arrive exhausted at the threshold of insight? How many times has your energy dispersed into shadows, leaving clarity just out of reach? This is not laziness. This is the resistance speaking, an old protective reflex guarding your habitual patterns. Look closely at your daily life. Notice the loops: waking, scrolling, reacting, producing. Each task is a thread in the tapestry of resistance. The mind clings to motion because it fears surrender. You feel it in the tension across your shoulders, the racing of your thoughts, the subtle urge to escape silence at all costs. Yet there is a hidden path. The descent is not a fall, it is a calibrated movement inward. Like a diver descending into the ocean's depths, the pressure is part of the process. You cannot reach the luminous currents of clarity without passing through the unease of surrender. Each pause, each intentional withdrawal from busyness becomes a laboratory for transformation. Consider this: in chaos, the mind perceives threats. In quiet, it perceives patterns. In surrender, it perceives possibility. The universe arranges itself in probability waves, yet these waves are invisible to those who never stop to observe. Your stillness does not halt the current. It aligns you with it. You are not lost. You are precisely navigating the undercurrents. Neuroscience confirms what mystics have long known. When the mind rests, when neural activity shifts from beta turbulence to alpha and theta coherence, insight emerges spontaneously. The hippocampus consolidates patterns, the default mode network activates creativity, and intuition becomes perceptible. Quantum physics mirrors this principle. Outcomes are not forced. They collapse from probability into reality only when observed and aligned. In surrender, in unclenching, you collapse the potential of your life into a coherent trajectory. Mystical traditions call this wu-wei, effortless action. The Sufis speak of the inner stillness that allows the universe to move through you. Taoist teachings insist that yielding is not weakness, it is mastery. You are learning the courage to trust that the unseen currents are arranging themselves, even as you release control. I need to confess something. I resisted this truth for years. I equated motion with meaning, thought busyness proved my worth, and feared that if I stopped, everything would crumble. I remember nights spent pacing, planning, doing, only to wake exhausted and empty. The resistance was relentless, whispering that surrender meant failure, and yet, the first moment I allowed myself to pause intentionally, to descend into stillness, a subtle shift occurred. The tension in my body began to dissolve. Patterns I could not see in motion became visible. Opportunities appeared not through effort, but through alignment. I realized that courage is not in constant striving, but in the quiet bravery of unclenching. That night, I met the resistance face to face and realized it was not an enemy. It was a guide, showing me exactly where I needed to surrender to move forward. This is the courage of descent. It asks you to lean into uncertainty, to trust that the ground will not vanish beneath you, that the universe has already prepared the trajectory you cannot yet perceive. Your personal descent is not an isolated act. It ripples outward. Imagine millions of consciousnesses practicing intentional unclenching. Each stillness becomes a coherent vector, aligning probabilities for global transformation. The world is trapped in motion without purpose, yet your courage signals a new possibility. When you pause, you do more than align your own trajectory. You contribute to a collective evolution. Humanity itself learns in subtle ways that surrender is not failure, that stillness carries power, that resistance is the threshold of mastery. Your liberation becomes a hidden lever for the awakening of others. Engagement is not casual here. If this message resonates, comment a single word that captures your alignment, a seal of intent. Subscribe not for mere content, but to join a frequency, a movement. Each interaction is a ritual, a marker of awakening. Do not rush back into the noise. Pause. Breathe. Observe. The currents you now navigate carry the potential for profound transformation. You were chosen to hear this. Only your consciousness could recognize the necessity of descent. Only your courage can activate the shift. Descend, surrender, trust. Every future self who has transcended patterns has passed through this very moment. You are not late. You are precisely on time. In the quiet, in the stillness, your next trajectory begins. This message found you, not randomly, but because your consciousness hums at a frequency that notices the subtle currents others overlook. Only your kind of mind would pause here, sensing that life has always asked for more motion than you were designed to give. Have you noticed how every day seems to accelerate, how habits and obligations pull you forward, yet the clarity you seek remains just out of reach? How many times have you moved relentlessly, only to find that the answers you sought were not in action, but in the silence behind it? Pause. Let the weight of those words settle like dew on the early morning grass. You are rare. Not because of achievement, not because of status, not because of titles, but because you are capable of perceiving alignment. You feel the currents where others see only chaos. The universe responds not to frantic motion but to coherent presence, and you are on the edge of this threshold. Today, you are being invited to cross it. Ace results. We have been trained to believe that busyness is proof of meaning, that motion guarantees outcome. Yet the more you act, the more scattered you feel. The mind clings to motion because it fears emptiness. It fears that if you do less, reality will collapse, and yet, the collapse is only an illusion. Have you ever tried to force an outcome only to see it elude you? Have you ever scheduled, planned, and executed with perfection, yet the breakthrough remains invisible? That is the trap of overaction. Your habits, your routines, your compulsion to fill every second with motion. All of this becomes a veil, hiding the subtle mechanics of alignment. Resistance rises because the mind equates stillness with loss. It whispers, "Do not pause, do not wait, do not let go." And yet, quantum reality and subtle perception both teach that the trajectory you cannot yet see responds to the space you create, not the force you apply. Look closely at your life patterns. Notice the habitual loops: checking, responding, planning, reacting. Each micro-action creates momentum, but it also absorbs subtle energies that are essential for insight. The mind clings to busyness because it confuses motion with existence. Yet real power, subtle influence, and unseen opportunity emerge only when space is made. Imagine this. The universe is like a field of probability waves. Each wave carries potential outcomes. Each moment carries countless possible alignments. When you rush, when you act compulsively, these waves disperse. The coherence, the alignment that allows life to answer you, remains hidden. When you pause, you do not stop the world. You shift into resonance with it. Calls align, ideas surface. The right people drift into your orbit, not because you forced it, but because you created a field of coherence. This is the threshold experience, the subtle, almost imperceptible shift where the world begins to respond to your stillness rather than your agitation. Daily life is full of these mini thresholds. A conversation, an email, a gesture. When you are coherent, these thresholds open naturally. When you are fragmented, they remain closed. The shift is subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable once you notice. Science mirrors this phenomenon. Neuroscientists describe a state called default mode network coherence, a neural pattern that emerges when the mind rests from constant tasking. Creativity, problem-solving, and insight spike during these periods of intentional stillness. Quantum physics tells a similar story. Probability collapses into reality not through force, but through observation. Your intentional presence, the act of letting go, creates the conditions for outcomes to manifest. Mystical traditions have encoded this truth for millennia. Taoist Wu Wei, the art of effortless action, teaches that alignment precedes manifestation. Sufi mystics speak of silence as a vessel for divine flow. Your pause, your unclenching, is not idleness. It is the lever of coherence, the threshold through which subtle probabilities converge. When you cross this threshold, the world does not change. You do. And in your alignment, life responds. I will share something vulnerable here. For years, I believed that movement was the path to progress. I chased deadlines, achievements, and endless action, fearing that if I paused, I would fall behind. Yet every step forward felt heavy, every success hollow. I was moving but never arriving. Then one day I tried it. I did less. Not lazily, but intentionally. I allowed a day to unfold without forcing outcomes. Calls arrived unexpectedly. Ideas emerged fully formed. A key person entered my life, as if the universe had waited for me to slow down. That day I understood the threshold. I realized that stillness is not a passive retreat. It is the point at which life itself begins to answer. The resistance, the unease, the fear was intense. My mind screamed that I was wasting time, that I would lose control. But the threshold experience showed me that trust, patience, and coherence carry far more power than frantic action ever could. The threshold is where subtle reality meets intention. By crossing it, you shift the probability of your life from scattered chance to aligned flow. Your personal threshold experience is not isolated. It echoes outward. Imagine millions of minds practicing intentional pause. Each coherent field becomes a vector of influence, a subtle alignment in the global consciousness. Humanity is trapped in compulsive motion, yet your alignment signals possibility. That stillness is not weakness, that less can yield more, that the subtle currents respond to intentional presence. Your mastery of this threshold contributes to collective awakening. Each moment you create coherence expands the collective probability for alignment, insight, and evolution. The world quietly begins to respond to the courage of your stillness. Engagement is sacred here. If this message resonates, comment a single word below that represents your alignment, a seal of intent. Subscribe, not for content, but to join a frequency, a movement, a field of coherence. Each interaction becomes a ritual, a marker of awakening. Do not rush back into busyness. Pause, observe, cross your threshold consciously. The world is waiting, not for your effort, but for your alignment. Only your consciousness could recognize this moment. Only your presence can activate this subtle yet undeniable shift. Slow down, breathe, observe the threshold. This is where life responds. Every future self who has mastered flow has crossed this moment. You are not late. You are precisely on time. In your stillness, coherence blooms. In your alignment, life begins to answer. This message found you, not by accident, but because your consciousness hums on a frequency that detects the subtle currents of life others overlook. Only your kind of mind would pause here, sensing that there is more to presence than motion, more to mastery than constant striving. Have you noticed how every day pulls you in 100 directions, yet clarity remains elusive? How many times have you poured energy into motion only to discover the world did not respond as you expected? You are rare, not in achievement, not in accolades, but in the capacity to perceive alignment. You sense the currents where others feel only chaos. And now, you are at the threshold of the trap is subtle, yet persistent. The illusion that effort equals influence, that motion equals mastery. We have been conditioned to believe that doing more produces results, that relentless activity proves significance. Yet the more you act without alignment, the more scattered your impact becomes. Have you felt this? Have you chased outcomes, pushed agendas, and yet your energy dissipates like smoke in the wind? That is the trap of misaligned effort. Your attention is a resource, not infinite. When you expend it indiscriminately, coherence collapses, probability waves scatter, and influence diminishes. The mind resists this truth because it fears inaction, fears the unknown, fears letting go. But mastery demands a different courage, the courage to act only when the current carries you, not when habit or fear dictates. Look closely at your patterns. Notice the habitual loops of motion, constant messaging, planning, reacting, producing. Each micro-action consumes attention, fracturing your energy. The mind equates doing with significance, yet subtlety reveals the opposite. Integration is not inactivity, it is deliberate presence. Like a sailor at sea, mastery is not thrashing oars against the tide, but catching the wind at the perfect moment. Doing less does not mean emptying your life. It means directing your attention with precision, allowing energy to accumulate where it matters most. Consider the small examples: a conversation, a decision, a moment of influence. When attention is scattered, these moments pass unnoticed. When attention is orchestrated, even subtle acts carry multiplied impact. Integration allows life to answer you, rather than you chasing life. Neuroscience confirms the power of attentional mastery. Studies show that deliberate focus, rather than frenetic multitasking, activates coherence in the brain, improving pattern recognition, insight, and creative problem-solving. Your energy is conserved, probability waves collapse efficiently, and outcomes emerge naturally. Quantum physics mirrors this principle. Outcomes are not forced. They emerge when observation aligns with potential. Your deliberate presence, attention orchestrated rather than scattered, becomes the lever through which reality coheres. Mystical traditions have encoded the same principle. Taoist Wu Wei teaches effortless action, alignment over force. Sufi masters speak of conscious stillness where presence amplifies influence. Integration is mastery, not of controlling every outcome, but of guiding your attention into resonance with the currents that already exist. I must confess, I once believed that relentless effort was the only path to impact. I filled every moment with motion, every decision with urgency, every day with tasks. Yet my influence felt thin, my energy fractured, my clarity obscured. I was active, but not aligned. Then one day, I consciously slowed, acted only when momentum guided me, and observed the subtle flow. Calls aligned. Opportunities emerged without strain. My energy, previously scattered, became concentrated. The impact of every action multiplied. I realized that mastery was not in doing more, but in orchestrating attention. That moment changed everything. I understood that the currents of life respond to coherence, not force.
Presence, deliberate and conserved, carries far more power than frantic striving ever could. Integration is mastery, not of controlling every outcome, but of orchestrating your own attention.
Your presence becomes deliberate, your energy conserved, your influence multiplied, your personal rhythm contributes to a larger shift. Imagine millions of minds mastering attention, orchestrating presence rather than chasing motion. Each conscious pause, each aligned action, creates ripples of coherence in collective consciousness. Humanity is trapped in relentless activity, unaware that less can yield more. Your mastery signals possibility. That influence arises from alignment, not force. That presence carries power. That deliberate attention shapes reality. Every individual who integrates their rhythm amplifies collective evolution, tipping the probability of humanity toward coherence. Engagement is sacred. If this transmission resonates, comment a single word that represents your alignment, a marker of intent. Subscribe not for content, but to join a field of coherence, a frequency, a movement. Every interaction is a ritual, a seal of your commitment to integration. Do not rush back into scattered motion. Breathe. Observe. Act with orchestration. Your mastery begins here. Only your consciousness could recognize this moment. Only your deliberate presence can activate this shift. Catch the wind. Conserve your energy. Align your attention. Every future self who has mastered influence has passed through this threshold. You are not late. You are precisely on time. In your orchestration, your impact multiplies. In your alignment, life responds. Here is the trap: the belief that more action, more rituals, more strategies equals transformation. We have been trained to think that the answer lies in accumulation, in doing, in layering technique upon technique. But have you noticed that this very accumulation often drains energy rather than amplifying it? That frantic grasping, the endless pursuit of leverage, leaves subtle opportunity unnoticed. The mind resists stepping back because it fears inertia, fears loss of control, fears falling behind. Yet true quantum shifts, true alignment, do not emerge from effort alone. They emerge from the audacious act of stepping back, allowing coherence to emerge naturally. This is not laziness, it is deliberate surrender. It is the courage to let life itself propel you forward, rather than you propelling life with force. Ask yourself, how many times have you overloaded yourself with techniques, only to feel exhausted, fragmented, and empty? How often has relentless striving obscured the subtle currents that were already working in your favor? This is the trap of overaction, the resistance of a mind trained to equate doing with being. Look closely at daily life. Notice the patterns, the constant checking of devices, the scheduling, the microtasking, the compulsive optimization. Each action fragments attention. Each more disperses energy. And yet, just beneath the noise, the universe is arranging, shifting, responding. Your momentum is already present. The key lies in stillness. Imagine a river. Rushing water cannot fully reveal the depth, the subtle currents, the hidden channels beneath the surface. Step back, observe. Allow your attention to settle. In this pause, you discover patterns, opportunities, and alignments that were invisible in motion. This is the paradox. You do not gain power by doing more. You gain power by allowing. You do not gain clarity by grasping. You gain clarity by observing. Like a telescope, you must align, focus, and wait for the light to arrive at the lens. Life's subtle signals only reveal themselves when you unclench. Neuroscience confirms this principle. The brain thrives not under constant stimulation, but in moments of rest and coherence. The default mode network activates during pauses, allowing insight, problem-solving, and creative synthesis to emerge spontaneously. Quantum physics echoes the same truth. Outcomes collapse into reality not from force, but from observation. The probability waves of your life do not need frantic manipulation. They respond to alignment, resonance, and stillness. The universe was already moving you forward. The act of grasping only clouds perception. Mystical traditions encode this wisdom. Taoism calls it Wu Wei, effortless action. Sufi teachings speak of surrendering to flow. Zen masters insist that stillness is not emptiness, but a vessel for the universe's own momentum. The quantum shift you seek is not in doing more. It is in daring to step back and allow life to breathe into you. I must confess, I once believed that transformation demanded relentless effort. I chased every technique, attended every workshop, followed every ritual, thinking that mastery was built through accumulation. And yet, I felt depleted, scattered, disconnected from the subtle currents of life. Then, slowly, I experimented with letting go. One day I did less, I paused. I allowed events to unfold without pushing. And something miraculous happened. Patterns emerged effortlessly. Opportunities arrived without force. Ideas crystallized as if the universe had been waiting for me to step back. That day, I realized the audacious truth. Momentum is never lost in stillness. The world does not pause because you do. It moves always. And in your pause, alignment becomes visible. In your surrender, your trajectory becomes coherent. I learned that quantum shifts are born in unclenching, not in grasping. The quantum pause is not inaction, it is alignment. Not emptiness, it is full presence. Your liberation, your clarity, your quantum shift emerges in the stillness that allows the universe to move you forward. Your pause is not isolated. Imagine millions of consciousnesses daring to release compulsive grasping, daring to step back, allowing life's currents to guide them. Each intentional pause, each alignment with subtle momentum, generates ripples in collective consciousness. Humanity is trapped in motion without alignment. Your courage, your willingness to unclench, signals a new possibility. That influence arises not from effort alone, but from resonance, coherence, and deliberate presence. Each individual practicing the quantum pause amplifies collective evolution, tipping the probability of humanity toward alignment, flow, and insight. Engagement is sacred here. If this message resonates, comment a single word that reflects your commitment to stillness, a seal of intent. Subscribe, not merely for content, but to join a frequency, a field, a movement. Each interaction becomes a ritual, an energetic activation, a marker of your alignment with the currents of life. Do not rush back into busyness. Pause, observe, allow life to breathe through you. The universe was already moving you forward, and your daring to unclench is the final key to your quantum shift. Step back, breathe, observe. The world does not halt because you pause. Momentum is never lost. In stillness, you discover the subtle currents, the hidden alignments, the coherence that has always been moving you forward. Your liberation, your clarity, your mastery emerge here, quietly, audaciously, inevitably.